In this movie, I'm going to show you how to assign a graphic style to an entire layer. And so here's the idea. I really want these polygons to be in line with the word obey. So right now the text is getting rotated around its center, while the polygons are each getting rotated around their centers, and as a result, everything's out of kilter. So I'm going to press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac until I return to my original boring gray polygons. And so the solution, by the way, is to style the entire layer. And so one way to work is to return to the Layers panel and twirl open that type layer, which contains both of the polygons, as you can see, represented as compound paths, as well as the text. Then what you want to do is grab that circular meatball right there, which appears sculptured because it has dynamic effects assigned to it. And then you want to go ahead and drag it and drop it onto the circle for the layer in order to produce this effect. The problem is that while we move the attributes as well as the dynamic effects, which you can confirm by targeting the layer, which you do by clicking on its circular so-called meatball, then switch to the appearance panel, at which point you'll see all of your effects. We've got the offset path at the top, followed by pucker and bloat, and then way down here at the bottom is the final transform effect. That's where you need it to be, by the way, so that it controls all the fill and stroke attributes, because if you move it up, everything will fall apart. But our problem is that our text, which I'll select by first deselecting everything by pressing Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac, and then clicking on my text, you can see that it still has its fill and stroke attributes. And so what I would need to do is here in the Appearance panel, click on the flyout menu icon and choose Clear Appearance in order to make everything look the way it should. Or I could work in the opposite direction. So for example, I could press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac a couple of times in order to return to the text with the gray polygons, and then I could select the text, go to the Appearance panel flyout menu, and choose Clear Appearance. And then return to my Layers panel and target the layer once again, and this time, instead of moving any effects around, I'll go up to the Graphic Styles panel and I'll click on my scallop style. And as you can see, that does everything we want it to. And by the way, my compound paths here, my polygons, if I were to target one of them and switch back to the Appearance panel, I'll see that they each still have their transform effects. And so if I click on the word transform, you can see the horizontal scale value is set to 100% and the vertical scale value is set to 150%. So this way, we're not wiping out that transform effect with another one. We're just applying them on top of each other. Now, the reason this is a great way to work, I'll go ahead and switch back to my Layers panel and target the entire layer once again, is that notice what happens here. I can see an outline around this scallop style, and that tells me that I have a link to that style. And so if I were to ever update the style, then the contents of this layer would update along with. But you may wonder how in the world to pull that off, because notice if you double click on this scallop thumbnail right there, you bring up the Graphic Style Options dialog box, which allows you to rename the style, but that's it. It doesn't give you any direct editing capabilities, which tells me I have a link to that style. And so if I ever update the style, then I'll update the contents of this layer as well. Compare that, if you will, to what happens if I click on the rectangle in the background. Even though I had originally applied this Jive GS style to it in the first place, because I went ahead and changed, as I'll see here in the Appearance panel, this bottom fill to yellow, I ultimately broke the link. And so if I want to reestablish that link, what I have to do is once again click on that style in order to select it. And so at this point, you may wonder, well, how in the world do you update a style? Because after all, if you double click on one of these guys, then all you can do is change its name and nothing more, which is why I'm going to show you how to update one or more graphic styles and in turn update the objects linked to them in the very next movie.